Initiation by Elisabeth Haich. Chapter 18. The Horizon Brightens. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed. I waited for a sign, something that would point the way towards what I should do, towards my duty, towards my sacrifice, in accordance with the voice of the invisible one who had spoken to me. But the voice came no more. No matter how often I tried to enter the special state of mind and spirit in which I would feel again the strange and indescribable buzzing and tingling throughout my whole body, as if I were bathing in soda water, no matter how often I tried to close off my organs of sense, to get myself into a state of inner receptivity, ready to hear the voice, it was all to no avail. I was perplexed. I was waiting and waiting for a sign, in vain. On the other hand, I did not want to waste time, so I came to the conclusion that the best thing for me to do would be to carry out my earthly duties as well as possible, hoping all the while that my inner voice would sooner or later tell me what my duty was to be as a co-worker in the great plan. I also felt that I would have to free my soul of every selfish attitude if I wanted to see the truth with perfect clarity, just as a window pane must be clean in order for us to see the sunshine clearly through it. The first step in this direction is to know what is really inside me. As soon as I know my inner self thoroughly, I can cleanse and purify it. I began to investigate the source and inner motivation of all my thoughts, my words, my movements and deeds. What kind of unconscious power is at work within me? Where do my thoughts come from? What is it within me that wills me to say one thing or another? Why do I want to do just this thing, not something else? When I was happy about something, I investigated why I was happy about it. When I was depressed or angry, I sought out the reasons for these feelings. When I felt attracted toward another person or repelled by him, I immediately analyzed myself to discover the characteristics responsible for these feelings. I kept myself under constant observation as to why I liked to do some things and disliked doing others. When I was feeling talkative, I sought to find the reasons and the motives behind my loquaciousness. When feeling reserved, I sought the reasons for my taciturnity. I analyzed every word that came out of my mouth to see whether it was completely true, whether it could prove hurtful to no one. I observed the effects of my words and my deeds on others around me. I constantly tried to trade pieces in my imagination with the person to whom I was speaking. What would I feel if he were saying to me the words I was saying to him? Constantly, uninterruptedly, I kept myself under observation. This everlasting self-scrutiny brought me uncounted riches. Little by little, I became acquainted with the magical world of the subconscious and superconscious. I came to recognize the various manifestations of one and the same force, from the lowest urges on up to the highest spiritual self. I came to realize that we have a free choice. We can identify ourselves with our instincts or remain masters of them, that is to say, remain ourselves. I learned that to be a free human being means to control one's instincts and not become the slave of one's passions, desires, and wishes. Along with my incessant self-analysis, I continued to study psychology and philosophy without neglecting my wood carving or my music. Artistic work provides a wonderful opportunity to turn inward spiritually and to ponder all kinds of questions. Once an art critic was visiting us and saw my furniture that I had carved myself. Over the bed I had hung a faun playing a flute, all carved out of wood. The critic asked me whether I'd first modeled this figure in clay. I told him I didn't even know how to model in clay, and that I had carved it straight out of wood. I simply carve away all the wood that was superfluous. I said, "Have you studied anatomy?" he asked further. No, I studied music, was not able to attend 2 colleges at the same time. After scrutinizing my carvings a little longer, he said, "It's a shame you're not a sculptress." Without training, I would always be a dilettante, and that's just what I would want to be. Oh, and that's just what I wouldn't want to be. But I cannot register at the Art Academy because I don't want to neglect my husband and child. All right, he said, I'll talk to the director of the School of Manual Arts. He may perhaps make an exception and permit you to attend classes in the sculpture without taking all the side courses. You don't need them anyway. I believe it should be possible for you to attend the art school on special terms. In this way, I was able first to attend art school and later to receive training from one of the greatest master sculptors of the day. The first time I reported to him, he came very close to me, peered into my face intently, and said in a very surprised tone, "How interesting. You are the first living being I have ever seen with Egyptian eyes. Did you know that you have Egyptian eyes?" "No," I replied. "I don't even know what the difference is between Egyptian eyes and ordinary eyes." The opening of the eyes are slit longitudinally at the side of the eye, and this makes the eyelids rest in a completely different position from those of other races. When you look at a picture, you can tell immediately by this characteristic whether the picture is Egyptian or not. But I never dreamed I would find such eyes in a living person. Present-day Egyptians don't have eyes like this anymore. One only sees them in pictures, just as one can only see the long, drawn-out Egyptian skull formation in pictures and sculptured artifacts. But where did you get these eyes of yours? I smiled politely and I said, "I just don't know, Professor. Maybe I'm reverting to type." He smiled too and then started me on my work. A year later, he entered the studio where I was working, and he had several of them all near each other. "From now on," he said, "I'm not accepting any more tuition from you. If you have no studio of your own, you can work here. But as an independent artist, you no longer need my guidance, only practice to get better and better at expressing yourself in this medium." I thanked him for his efforts and for his kind offer. Since I had a large studio at home, I had already held several exhibits. I continued my work under my own roof. My professor remained a good friend and dropped in from time to time to see how my work was progressing. The work made me happy, completely happy, even ecstatic. Time, space, and the world around me ceased to exist. I felt no physical wishes, hunger or thirst. I even forgot myself completely. I noticed that a force flowed into my nerves while I was concentrating on my work, and that this force exerted a healing influence on mind and body. Many times when I was concentrating on my work and thinking about nothing else, I suddenly recognized a truth which had no relationship whatsoever to my work. And in this way I often received answers to philosophical, psychological, or other unsolved problems which had been occupying my mind. In such cases, I would stand motionless a moment, my modeling tool in my hand, while my inward eye surveyed the new truth, the new discovery. At such moments, I felt as if my head had just poked up through the ceiling of one room and emerged above the floor in an upper room. It was a wonderful feeling to look around with my inward eye in this newly discovered upper room, inspecting all the hidden treasure lying there. These brilliant flashes of inspiration began to come more and more frequently, not only while I was modeling in clay or playing piano, but almost any time I was concentrating on something. Once I experienced something very strange. This time, however, it did not occur during my work, but in the late evening, just as I was about to drop off to sleep. Our beds were next to each other, and we both had the habit of reading for a little while in bed before falling asleep. On this particular evening, we both of us read for a while. Finally, I got sleepy, said goodnight to my husband, turned off my reading lamp, stretched, closed my eyes to go to sleep. I closed my eyes, but I still saw everything in the room. My eyes were closed quite normally, but I was able to see everything, every object in the room quite normally, including my husband lying in his bed next to mine, leafing through his book. I quickly opened my eyes again to see whether my husband really was leafing through his book, or whether the whole phenomenon had been a projection of my own imagination. But his motions continued just as I had seen them with my eyes closed. I closed my eyes again, but still saw everything. Thus surprised, I sat up in bed again and I looked around the room with my eyes closed and still saw everything quite clearly. Only one thing was very peculiar, namely, I did not see things in 3 dimensions, but flat and transparent. Just as my eyelids seemed to be transparent, like a photographic negative or like an X-ray picture, but much clearer and more transparent. For example, I saw my sewing machine through its wooden cover, the pictures on the wall in the next room through the closed door, the clothes hanging in the closet, and all my little possessions lying chaotically in my writing desk. The whole picture was like an impression of all the things lying one behind the other. My husband watched for a while as I looked around the room in various directions with my eyes closed. "What are you doing?" he asked finally. All excited, I answered that I was able to see everything in the room with my eyes closed. He became curious and tried several little experiments to find out whether I could see how many fingers he was holding up, and similar things. I was not able to see his fingers, but the bones and organs in his body. It was really positively weird, but my sense of humor won the upper hand, and I burst out laughing at seeing him so transparent. Finally, we did fall asleep. As usual, I slept peacefully, and the next morning I saw everything quite normally again, and only when my eyes were open. And for quite a long time afterwards, there was no reoccurrence of this strange phenomena. I went on with the sculpturing as if nothing had happened. As I continued to work with my modeling tools, I did not neglect my studies in psychology. More and more people came to me to discuss their spiritual problems. In this way, I kept on gaining in practical experience. Several years went by in this manner, steady work in the wintertime, family life together on the lakeshore amid the beauties and nature in the summer.